Hi, and welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman, and thank you so much for stopping by today. I had promised you in my previous video that I would share with you how to make the block that's in this Diamond Stars quilt. This is one of my designs in McCall's Quilting magazine, the winter issue, which is available right now. It has featured this is one of their quilts in the magazine, and this is the magazine that you'll find it in. It's the winter issue. That issue is available for sale at your Joann's store, maybe at your favorite quilt shop. And I do also have in the description box below a link so that you can go out and purchase that magazine or the PDFs for the quilts that are in the magazine. McCall's does offer individual PDFs for each of their patterns that are in this magazine, which is a great opportunity for you to get something that you might want. So check out the description box below to see everything that's available for you. What's really interesting about this quilt is that in the center of the quilt, there's only one block that is used and repeated in that center of the quilt to make that beautiful star. That is the block. It's amazing, isn't it, that that block creates these beautiful stars. And I'll share with you today how to do that. The instructions and directions with all of the measurements, etc., are in the McCall's magazine. So when you get your McCall's magazine or the PDF, you'll be able to see exactly what size of all of these parts and pieces that you'll need. But I'm going to give you an overview of how to put that block together. So on my tabletop here, I have a sample of a portion of the wall quilt that I had created when I was designing this for McCall's. And you'll see right here in front of me, this is one square right here. It's a 12-inch finished in the quilt, 12.5 inches unfinished. But there is one square here. I made 16 for this wall quilt that you see up behind me on the wall. And it's an interesting quilt or block to understand how this goes together to create the beautiful stars. But there are a couple of diamonds. There's some large triangles here. There are some triangles here that create beautiful diamonds, and there is a square in the center. This block does go together with two Y seams. But today I also want to share with you, I'll show you how that is done, but I also want to share with you how you can make this same block and eliminate the Y seams. You're simply going to take this center square and cut it larger and then cut it on the diagonal. Then you'll be creating this side of the block and you'll be creating this side of the block and sewing them together all the way down the diagonal. And you'll have a complete block with no Y seams. So let's see how they're both put together. So in the magazine, it starts on page 44 and it goes all the way to page 49 of the magazine. So you'll see the quilt, it does have an intermediate skill level, gives you the finished size and the blocks, etc. It gives you a picture of the entire quilt, gives you the instructions. We are using bias. There's a lot of bias that is being used here as you're sewing. So make sure before you get started that you actually starch your fabrics nicely so they retain some body so that it sews much easier. There are also templates in the magazine that you're going to want to get traced onto template plastic. But we're going to go ahead now. I'm going to show you how to make this block using the Y seams as well as one block without the Y seams. All right, so I have laid out the block as you would put it together, with the square in the center, and there are the two diamonds. I think I called these triangles earlier. I'm sorry. These are the triangles. These are the diamonds. And then there are more diamonds here that you can simply piece together as 4 patches to create a large diamond like this. And when you sew it together, the Y seams are going to be, you're going to sew this together with a Y seam, and you'll sew this together with a Y seam, and then these triangles get sewn on the end. The templates that you're going to need are in the pattern. It's on page 49, so make sure that you get all of that traced properly onto plastic template film or cut from yardage, however you like to create your templates. But I used plastic template film to trace mine. And that's what I've done. So the first thing that I'm going to do when I create each of the blocks is simply put my 4-patch together. And when you put the 4-patch together, you're simply going to use the little notches and sew 1/4 inch here, and again here, and sew 1/4 inch there. And then when you open these up, you'll be able to sew it together that direction. There we go. So that will create this larger diamond, which will match this one in size once the seam allowances are in there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these two 4-patch units together. I'll bring them back to the tabletop so you can see how I've done that. So here I'm at my machine, and you can see when the templates were cut out, there were little notches that are available on the templates, and they just help you to line things up. So I'm going to sew these together, and I'm going to line up those notches there and this down here, and sew 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to set that under the machine for right now. And then this one, I will line up those notches there, and that's ready to be sewn. I'll lay that right down here. So let me go ahead and get started. The notches have that 1/4 of an inch spot there that allows you to, whoops, I moved things, which allows you to make sure that you're starting and stopping at the right spot. So that's the 1/4 of an inch notch there. Let me go ahead and get started sewing on that. And finish. There we go. And now I'm going to take it over and press it. But for right now, I'm going to, actually what I did on my entire quilt is I pressed all of the seam allowances open. Make sure that you use a 2.0, a shorter stitch length when you do that. But I found by pressing all of my seam allowances open, things just laid beautifully. So that's what I've done there. So those are sewn. Now, when you sew these together, you're going to make sure that this goes together with a cross there. Can you kind of see how there's, got to push that together a little bit more, but it's kind of got a cross there. And that is how that is going to line up. So let me go ahead and stitch that. And of course you can pin things. I haven't actually done that today, but you're certainly welcome to pin all of this. Let's see how I did. There we go. Okay, so it is done. Now what I'm also going to do, I'm just finger pressing right now, but I'm going to go over to the iron and set the seam and then press it open. And by pressing all of this open, it's simply going to, that seam got caught under, so I'm going to take that apart and make sure that that seam lays flat open. That will allow this point in the center to lay nice and flat. So let me quick take that out. And then I'm going to sew the other diamond just like this, and I'll meet you back at the table. All right, I have these larger diamonds patched, the 4 patches put together, so they're ready. And now you'll just want to follow the instructions in the magazine, and it shares with you how you can start stitching from here down to here, and then from here to here, and then you can sew your Y seam from there to there. So let me take you to the machine and show you how to sew that. The McCall's pattern does let you know that you should mark 1/4 of an inch on the inside of this A square. This is called the A square. Mark 1/4 of an inch dot on the inside of that and 1/4 of an inch dot there, because this is where the Y seams will be constructed. And you should also mark 1/4 of an inch on this B diamond right here. So I've already done that. I've marked it with this blue pen. I don't know that you're actually going to be able to see that though. I can see it as I'm sewing, but I've used a disappearing pen. I don't think you're going to be able to see that, but that's what we're going to use for the starting and stopping points. So I am going to take this unit here, and I'm going to start with it, and I'm going to put it right sides together. And when I sew, you're going to stop or start at that little point there. And I'm actually going to start up at the top here and finish right there. I'm going to put a pin there since it's on the opposite side. Let me grab a pin. And I've placed it right through the dot, so I know exactly where I need to finish. All right. Now I'm going to start sewing here at 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to come all the way down to that dot right there, which the pin is marking. I want to make sure you can see what I'm sewing here. All right, here we go. And you can do a quick little back stitch when you get to that pin. I am not going to sew over the pin, but I am going to do a quick little back stitch. There we go. All right. I've sewn it, but it's loose there for that 1/4 inch. So that is done. Now I am going to finger press. As I said, I liked mine to be pressed open. You don't have to do that. You can certainly press yours to the dark whenever possible, but I pressed mine open. All right, there we go. Now we're going to put this one in here. And again, we're going to start up here and we're going to sew down to where that dot is. And I'm actually going to start on this side and I'll actually be able to see the dot as I'm sewing on this side. Here we go. So I got caught. And again, at this point, I'm just doing a back stitch, one back stitch there. Let's see how I did. Looking good. I'm going to open it, press it, finger press it open. This is finger pressed open. This is open. That's going to fold over right there. Hopefully you can see that, how it's folded open. Now we are going to fold your square into a triangle, which opens this up so that you can finish sewing this. So we're simply just going to start at that 1/4 inch dot there and sew on down to the end. So let me get it under the machine. I'm starting at that 1/4 inch dot. I might have gone a little bit too far inside the 1/4 inch seam. We'll see when I open this up. Let's see what I did. Oh, it was perfect. It worked out very well. I'm going to finger press that open. Here we go. I'm going to finger press these open and make them all lay nice and neat. Straighten everything out so it all lays flat. See how I've done that? Hopefully you can see that. So and it's going to lay much nicer when I get to the iron. And flip it over, there you go. It is ready to go. Let's see, I guess it was facing that direction. That's how we started. So the square's in the center, this diamond is here, this diamond is here. That part is done. We're going to repeat that process again with the dark diamond here and the 4-patch diamond over here. I'm going to go ahead and finish that. I'll probably do that in fast motion for you, and then we'll put the outside triangles on. I just reviewed the clip that I had just done for you, and I realized that some of what I was showing you was not centered in the screen there, and I apologize for that. So let me try this again so that you can see what I'm referring to. So I've actually pinned, both pins are on the 1/4 inch dot. The dots are actually on the opposite side, but I'm going to be sewing from this dot to this dot here. So I have pins, and when I stuck them in there, I just flipped it over and made sure that I placed it in the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to take it to the machine and I'll sew from that point there, and avoiding the pin. I'll sew and backstitch 1 stitch and come down here 1/4 inch and stop at that pin and backstitch 1 stitch. So let me show you that. All right, so I have it pinned, and I'm going to start sewing at that point right there. I'm going to lay that under my presser foot here, line everything up, remove my pin, stitch 1 or 2 stitches, back stitch 1, and then I'm going to continue coming down, removing this pin, and come on down to this last pin here. And I will not stitch over the pin. That's really important. But I will stop right there because that signifies where the 1/4 inch dot is on the opposite side. And then I'll back stitch. So let me show you that. All right, let's see how I did. There we go. There, it's open, it's loose down here, and it's loose up there. So that is ready to go. Now we're going to put this one in here. Before I do that, as I had mentioned earlier, I am pressing my seam allowances open. So here we go, if I can get my fingers in there. And I took the other part of this to the iron already and pressed it with the iron as well, but for now I'm just pressing with my fingers. Okay, so we have that section done. Now we are going to do the same thing. We're going to line up the 1/4 inch dots on here to these 2 seams right there. I will place that up there, put a pin at the 1/4 inch, at the 1/4 of an inch, and I will sew from here to there and do a little back stitch. I do. You may not want to or worry about the back stitch, but I do just 1 back stitch on each end. And then I will flip that open, press that seam open, and then I'm going to start this side. Let me show you this. All right, I have my pins in at the 1/4 inch dots, and I am going to sew from this side. So I will start at that seam allowance where the dot is, come all the way down to this pin, and that is the seam allowance there where I will stop and do 1 back stitch. And that allows those Y seams to remain open. They're loose in that inside 1/4 inch seam allowance there. So let me sew that, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, let's see how I did. Looks good. All right, so now I'm going to flip it open here to the back, press my seam allowance open, press this under, this open, so it lays nice and flat there. Then, again, I'm going to turn this center square on the diagonal. So I folded this whole thing. So let me show you that again. So it was like this. And I want this to be folded on the diagonal here so that I can sew down this seam here. So I'm going to fold it right sides together so the whole unit is folded on itself. And that opens this up nicely so that I can stitch from that 1/4 inch mark right there all the way down to the end 1/4 inch mark. So let me quick pin that, and then I'll bring it to the machine and show you how I'm going to stitch that. So I just stitched that whole thing and showed you how I did it and opened it up and pressed it, and then realized that the video didn't even turn on. So it's not, it was done, but I didn't get a video clip of it. But what I simply did was start up here, and I sewed a 1/4 of an inch all the way to the end. Then I opened it up. Here it is. And it worked out beautifully there. I also went underneath and I opened these, folded those little things in amongst themselves, opened this one up, folded it so it all lays really nice and flat there, and press that open. And the whole thing, all of the Y seam, well, there's only 2 Y seams, but they're now done. And I'm going to take it to the iron and press this side. I've already pressed that side, but I want to press this with the iron. And then we are going to add the large triangles on each side to create the square block. All right, I brought you over to the table because I want to share with you, first of all, we will be putting these on the outside edges and creating the square block, but I flipped this center over so that you can see how I have folded these. Let me see if I can get this closer. So when I press these open, I press that seam allowance open, that seam allowance open, and then I brought it this direction, and it created a little crease right there. And then I pressed this one open, and it created a crease on the other side. But it's just a really nice flat seam, a really nice flat seam, so that when you're quilting, there won't be this huge pucker there. So I really like how I've done that. I've just, by pressing it completely open, it just kind of folds over on itself. And that will allow the quilting to have no lumps that you're having to deal with. And it also makes the block just look so much nicer. Now what we're simply going to do is, and I'll bring this up a little farther so you can see, we're going to attach these 2 outside triangles. And you'll see that the triangles have a little bit of extra, so you'll be squaring up the block to 12.5 inches. But what I would do is take your triangles, fold them so that you have a crease in the center of the long edge, and then match that crease to this seam allowance right here. And then you'll have dog ears on each end as you stitch it down. But then you're going to, once you've got both of these on here, you're going to square it up to 12.5 inches. I'm going to go ahead and sew those 2 on, and I'll show you the resulting block. The block is finished, and you'll simply make 16 of these. And this is the block using the Y seams. And what I have done for pressing is this entire section here, I pressed all the seam allowances open, but these outer 2 triangles, I pressed the seam toward the triangle, and that allowed all of these seam allowances just to lay nicely. So the block lays beautifully. Now let's see how to put that same block together, but without Y seams. So you'll notice here that center square, I cut mine a 1/2 inch larger than the pattern requests that you cut for the other block. So this square that uses Y seams and this square that doesn't use Y seam, they're a 1/2 inch difference. This is cut a 1/2 inch larger. And then you're going to simply cut it on one diagonal. You're going to lay out, as you see here, the block the same as we did for the other square. So I've finished my 4-patch diamonds. I've pressed my seam allowances open, so they are ready to go. When you're putting your 4 patches together, make sure that your lights are at the top and your darks are on each side. It's very easy to get that switched around where you've got darks here and lights here. But if you do that, I guess that'd be okay, but just make sure then that you do each and every diamond the same way. But in my case, I'm putting, and according to the pattern, all of these brights or lights are at the top and at the bottom. So now what I'm going to do is sew this diamond to this side of the triangle, then we'll sew this unit to this side of that diamond, and we'll have one long strip. Then we'll sew this large triangle to that long strip. We'll do the same thing over here. This diamond will get sewn to this side of that triangle. This diamond will get sewn to that part of the triangle. And then this will get sewn to this unit. And then we'll sew those together. So let me show you how that's done. Right, I'm at the machine here. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this right sides together with that diamond unit. And there's going to be dog ears on each side, but I'm lining it up just like that. And I'm going to sew from over here to here, and I'm sewing 1/4 inch beginning at the very edge of the fabric and going all the way off. You're not allowing for an opening at either end like you do with Y seams. Make sure that you can see what I'm doing here as I'm sewing. There we go. So I came on the top of it there. I'm sewing all the way to the bottom. Let's take a peek. There we go. So that is ready. Now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm still going to continue pressing my seams open here. So there we go. So that's pressed open. So we have, whoops, we have that ready to go, like that. Bring it in here so you can see it. Now I'm going to attach this diamond to the bottom of that triangle. So here we go. Place that just like that. And you'll notice how they actually have these edges here that line up with the unit. So that works out well. And we're going to sew 1/4 inch from here all the way over to here. So let me do that. And I'm not pinning, I would recommend that you go ahead and pin, but I'm just holding it there and sewing. Now I can sew this triangle to this unit, and I'll have half of my block ready. I'm going to do the very same thing to the other half and then sew them together here. And again, you are working with a lot of bias, so you've got to be very careful that you're not stretching or pulling anything. That's really important. In fact, once you've cut everything out, you might want to starch everything one more time before you start piecing, and that will help to maintain the integrity of the fabric as you're sewing. As you can see here, I've sewn this strip entirely together and sewn that triangle to that strip. I pressed the seam allowances toward the outside triangle. Now I have this strip put together. These 2 diamonds are attached to this center triangle, and that was a larger square cut on the diagonal. There we go. And now this is going to be sewn to that. Once that's done, then I can sew my entire block together. And so that's a way that you can create this unit or this block without having to deal with Y seams. I have finished the 2 blocks. This is the one that I sewed on the diagonal all the way across. So I've got a strip here, and these 2 triangles that all get sewn together. And this is the block that is using the Y seams. And so there are Y seams on both sets here. And when you put these blocks together in your quilt, you just have to orient them so that you're creating these nice big red squares or whatever color you happen to be using there. But that is what is going to create the beautiful stars. And it is important that the light, if you want the same look as is in the magazine here, if you want that same star appearance, you do want to make sure that your lighter colors are on the top and the bottom of these diamond units. You don't want them on each side, or it's going to give you a different look. And that's fine. If that's what you want, you can certainly have fun and play with it and come up with something different. But that's how you lay your blocks. Just orient them in the rows. I've got, in this quilt, it's 4 rows of 4 that you're putting together. It's a very simple block. Thank you so much for joining me today as I've shared with you how to make this block using Y seams or not using Y seams. There's 2 different ways that you can make this block, and it creates a very beautiful quilt. I sure hope that you all get a chance to make this. And before I go, I will take close-ups of the quilt so that you can see some of the quilting options that I used. I did quilt this on my long arm. It was free motion hand-guided quilting that I used, and I'll show you that here. You can see some of that in the magazine. They did do some close-up photography to show some of that so that you'll have an idea of how I did quilt it. And also I wanted to let you know, if you don't subscribe to McCall's Quilting magazine, I'm going to link below where you can go to subscribe to that on a yearly basis. It's certainly a savings to be able to accomplish that, to purchase it for a year or a 2-year subscription, as opposed to buying individual magazines. But there's so many options for you. And again, McCall's does have individual PDF pattern patterns available that you can purchase. I've got links below, but you can go out and purchase any one of the patterns that are in the magazines. So check that out. I think you'll enjoy that. So I brought you over here just to kind of give you a glimpse. Might not be real easy to see the quilting. I did use a cream colored thread as I did all of the quilting in all of these different, the triangles, the diamonds, and so forth. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how I accomplished some of the quilting. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. If you like the content that I provide, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share these videos with your friends, with your family, and your quilt guilds. That really does help the channel to grow and to get out to more quilters just like yourself. And I thank you so much for doing that. So until next time, I hope you have a wonderful week and happy quilting.